You are? Well, you cut it at a certain point and I have to pay you. Is that your thought?
And that's it.
I don't think that'll work.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can get this glare out of here.
Okay, fellas. We're gonna get ready to go here.
How many we got?
We have got 6 so far, but we're at 6:33. Maybe we should go ahead and start. Let them join in as they can, the other ones.
Okay,
So is that all right with you?
sure.
All right, I've hit the record. I've hit the record button on here just to let everybody know we're going to record this for those who might miss tonight and want to see it later. And I am the host of the call, Steve Baska. I go to the St. Andrew Methodist Church, and most of these fellows on here are doing this. It's a class through St. Andrew. And I am going to just do things like run the video. We got a couple short videos, and let anybody know if they're going on too long or I can't hear them or something like that. And if you are new to Zoom also, you have a mute button on your screen, probably the lower left side. And please use that if you are having any background noise. Other than that, we're just going to kind of let this fly and see how we do.
No pun intended, right?
Right.
Anyway,
Exactly.
anyway, since we're doing this through a church, I thought we'd start off with a little religious bit. You know, Jesus was sort of big on fishermen. I'm sure y'all remember that Jesus went to the old fishing hole when he first started looking for apostles. Guess he figured that'd be a likely spot to find the kind of guys he was looking for. Andrew and Peter told Jesus that he was too good for him. He told them to follow him anyway. Guess he knew what he was doing. Another time, the fishermen were having no luck catching anything. Nothing was even biting. Jesus told them to fish from the other side of the boat, and they nearly sank the boat because the haul was so big. Now, I don't know if Jesus is going to make y'all all great fishermen, but knowing him certainly won't hoit. Jesus was making fishers of men. We won't attempt anything so grand in this class, but maybe, just maybe, we can all learn some things to coax some trout out of the water. You have 3 guys, Terry, Steve, and I, who purportedly know a little bit about fly fishing. I've been fishing with Steve, but never with Terry. But Terry's been fly fishing longer than Steve or I. He started in 1945.
Oh my God.
Now, I had to do some essential things like get born. So I didn't start fly fishing until 1955, which means that among the 3 of us, we have almost a century and a half's worth of experience. You would think the people with that much experience would know a whole lot more than what you're going to hear, but that's just the way it works. I graduated from the Orvish Fly Fishing School, so I'm going to be the one who theoretically understands the psychology of a fish and will attempt to explain that to you later. Anytime you have a contest, you need to hear both sides of the argument. So we're going to hear from the fish a little bit. Terry is the authority, him having more seniority and all. Steve and I are his bait boys. I could have said fly boys, but it sort of gives a wrong connotation. The format will be, we'll have videos from professional guys to start each class, and I'll do a thing on This Is a Fish. Terry, Steve, and I will adapt depending upon the experience level of the class and what folks specifically would want to know. Hopefully we'll be able to answer that. Then we'll tell and ask for fishing stories from the class, hopefully relevant to the video, but no promises there. As you know, fishermen are storytellers and view absolute veracity as sort of an option. Originally, before coronavirus, we were planning to hold our graduation ceremony on the Green River below Flaming Gorge Dam in Utah, lasting a couple of days next fall. It's my favorite fly fishing venue in the lower 48. We'll just have to see what the pandemic allows. Terry, let's see the video.
Hey, I'd like to comment on why Jesus told the fishermen to fish on the other side of the boat. The reason being, the fish are always on the in the shady side of the boat. Fish don't feed with the sun in their eyes. And so the fish will always hide, or sometimes hide under the shady side of your boat.
Well, I hadn't
that's
thought of that,
true.
but that makes a lot of sense. But it does show he knew what he was doing about fish.
Okay, Terry and Chris, did you want to have us go around and just say, each of us say hi and how long we've been fishing?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go next. I've been fishing for a long time, over 50 years in Colorado. I've been here almost 60 years, and I've fished most places in Colorado, some in Wyoming, Montana. My favorite stretch at the moment is down in New Mexico. And I'm going to focus mostly on fishing in Colorado. And what equipment do you need for fishing here?
Who's next? Steve, say something.
I'm trying to hit the mute button. I've been fishing actually all my life, so what I have not been doing is fly fishing. So just regular fishing in the Mancos Dolores area, the Dolores River a lot, sort of in the McPhee area. As we started to say at the beginning, we have a small cabin up in Fairplay. So the Fairplay area, that whole 285, 24 corridor. So.
Hi, I'm John Bell, and I've been fishing for about 15 years. I fished fly fished the Blue River just north of Dillon, and did a float trip halfway there to Aspen, got in the river and floated back to Glenwood Springs and caught some nice trout. But I don't have a lot of experience at fly fishing, so that's why I'm listening to you pros today.
Well, we may be experts. Now, let me define experts as my father defined it. An X is a has-been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. That's where we fit in.
Okay.
How about you, Brad?
Well, I would call myself a beginner. I took some Orvis classes last year, bought some equipment, and went fishing one time with a guide. Fly
Good
fishing.
start.
Yep.
Orvis
Where
was
did it
happy
take
to
you?
see.
I was kind of hoping you guys were going to do this last year, and I could have just kept on going with this, but I had to wait.
Well, Orvis was happy to see you. Your banker was not, I'm sure.
Yeah,
And Orvis has free classes too, by the way. So
right. I took 2 of the 3,
okay.
and then I went with a guide instead of waiting to do their guided.
And they just sent out an email today. I signed up for the next phase of classes, and if anyone wants those, just let me know.
What's the
Now,
next? What do you mean the next phase?
Oh, just I'm taking the beginning classes, so the ones you already taken.
Okay,
They're starting those again, a new series.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm Dwight Kinnis. I've been fishing for about, fly fishing for about, 15 or 20 years. I kind of grew up in Colorado, so I've been fishing with my dad my whole life. So
oh, good.
I pretty much fish the Colorado, Byers Canyon area, and then along the Blue, Cheeseman Canyon some, a few times up in Wyoming. So.
Steve?
Well, I'm a beginner too. I live in Castle Pines, and I go down to Decker's once in a while and try and see if I'm as smart as a 2-pound fish, and it never quite works out very good. So I thought I need to learn a little bit more. And so I'm going to try and become as smart as a 2-pound fish. You guys will help me out.
So I thought I'd sit here this afternoon. I was sitting around trying to figure out where I'd fish. So bear with me for a second. In
Okay.
Colorado, I fished the Crystal River, the Roaring Fork, the Frying Pan, the South Platte, the Gunnison, and the Arkansas. In Wyoming, the Snake, Green River, the Yellowstone, Slough Creek, and Wind River. In Idaho, Henry's Fork and Teton. In Montana, the Gallatin, the Madison, the Blackfoot, the Bitterroot, Beaver Head, and I guess that's it. That's it in the lower 48 at any rate.
Wow.
I've also fished, done bone fishing in the Bahamas and in Florida. And I've done most of my fishing lately has been in Alaska. So you'd think I'd know what I'm talking about, but not necessarily so. So I started fly fishing when I was 8. My father used to take my mother and I up to Marble, Colorado, if y'all are familiar where that is. And the name of that river is the Crystal River. And back then, the fishing was like this. Catch and release hadn't occurred to anybody. It didn't happen. So we ate what we caught. And it was good enough that we'd go to the stream bed. My mother would set up her frying pan and start the butter and the cornmeal and expect us to have the fish back by the time it was ready to cook. There were that many fish back then. Not so much anymore. I pretty much quit fishing Colorado when I was in my mid-20s because it had been fished out. And that's when I started going to Wyoming, Montana, Utah, and other places. So that's my experience.
Is it still fished out compared to Wyoming, Montana?
Yeah, and there isn't that much here. It's the fish are smaller and they're fewer and farther between. You got too many people. I forgot. I've also fished the Northeast. I was based in New York for a while, so I've fished up in. Let's see where that was. That'll come to me in a minute. I wrote that down for you. Oh, the Androscoggin River in New Hampshire, the Battenkill in Vermont, the Esopus in Catskill and Roscoe, and the Cocoton River in Finger Lakes up in New York. So and I've done for a number of years. I've horsebacked back in the backcountry of Yellowstone to go fly fishing. And I fished in New Mexico, I think what Terry's favorite river is going to be, which was the San Juan. So a few places here and there.
You are experienced. Okay, Chris, did you have something you wanted to talk about before we watch the video?
Well, I can do that afterwards or before, however you want to do it. Well, we can do it now. Now,
Okay, what you do it now?
in any kind of contest, Steve is always a stickler in his classes on hearing about both sides of the story. Because he wants nobody to make a decision until they've heard both sides of the story. So I'm going to attempt to give you, like I said, y'all talked about going to Orvis. I went to a 3-week class, Orvis in Manchester in the 80s, and it was pretty involved. And one of the things that they taught us was to try and think like a fish, okay? So I'm going to try and channel a trout here. We're going to name him Rainier the Rainbow. Now, we trout had it pretty good until Isaac Walton published his book, The Complete Angler, in 1653. You fishermen have been dogging us ever since. The trout family, excluding other salmonids, our relatives, consists of rainbow trout, cutthroat, cutbows, browns, brookies, and goldens. At least that's what you potentially will find in these here parts. The cutthroats are still resentful that the rainbow moved into their territory after the first ice age and infiltrated the Columbia River basin, then spread all over the place. They became close family eventually, and they interbred, creating cutboats. All hell broke loose when the U.S. Fish Commission imported German brown trout in 1883. The fish here liked them about as well as we liked the Germans in World War I and World War II. Those big ugly buggers are mean and eat rainbows and cutthroats, and they can completely take over a stream. They'll just run the other fish off if it gets too infested with browns. Brookies have the same complaints about rainbows and cutthroats. Brookies don't survive well where you have the bigger fish, because they'll eat their young. In the rainbow cutthroat family, we regard the brookies and goldens as our puny, weak relatives. Most brookies live in the Northeast, and we Westerners don't have much truck with those Yankees. Goldens dislike us so much that they've taken to living only in ponds above 10,000 feet, so you don't see them very often either. Since y'all will be fishing, for those of us who live in the rivers, a couple of thoughts about how us fish think. Trout don't live in ugly places. Our little brains work like a little computer since we're battling the current all our lives if you're river fishing. We like to hide behind rocks so we don't have to fight the current. So we calculate how many calories it's going to take us to duck out from behind that rock to get food, as opposed to how much we'll take in by eating it. And they're pretty smart about that. They managed to survive doing that. You could just think about if you were trying to swim all day in the current your whole life. It takes a lot of energy to do that. Also depends on how hard it is to catch the piece of food and how big it is. Riffles and bubble lines are also where the current is doubling back and on itself and bumping into another current, so it may form an eddy. We like to go there because that's where a bunch of food will congregate, and also we don't have to swim as hard. So you fishermen have figured that out, and you you fish the bubble lines in the riffles. Also, we like to hide out under submarine rocks. They block the current and provide good cover from osprey and other types of predatory birds that can see through the water and come swoop on us, and we can't see them until they get there. And they may even protect themselves from you if you're a decent fisherman. I, the fish, just love it when fishermen come clad in day-glow orange, bright yellow, or red. The popular misconception is that trout are colorblind. Let's just keep it, you believe in that, okay? Makes it a lot easier on us when you do that. Also, it's great if you make a lot of noise. We can't hear either. We eat a lot more than you cast a fly, so we're pretty good at determining what's food and what has a hook in it. We hate fishermen who can actually cast. It makes it real hard on us. To tell the difference, if your line slaps the water, we'll know it's not food and probably has a hook in it. If you fly cast and leave a wake, because if the fly is sort of motorboating, no fly actually spins that way. They know it's got a line on it. If you cast a shadow on the water, like you're standing on the bank and the sun's at your back, we know you're there. We're not stupid. We trout have a brain the size of a pea, but we only need to know two things: how to catch food and how not to get caught. We've been perfecting these mental disciplines for 15 to 20 million years, and we're getting pretty good at it at this point. That is not to say trout don't have a sense of humor. We have to dive deep into the rocks and go into the holes when we see some yahoo with $3,000 worth of shiny new gear from Orvis wearing a day-glow orange shirt, just to keep you from hearing us laughing. Fortunately, after thousands of years, you humans have developed some ethics in handling those of us who are dumb enough to get caught. First, flatten the barb on your hooks. That barb will kill us trout. It messes up our mouth so bad that we can't feed and we'll die of hunger. Catch and release is the only way to treat a trout these days. Back to the meal in number one. If you catch and release a trout whose mouth you've mangled, you've done no good at all because he'll die. So you need to be careful about that. Keep the trout out of water to the absolute minimum amount of time you can. Being out of water for a trout is much the same, affects them the same way as coronavirus affects you. They can't breathe. And I understand that's a big issue for your humans right now. Don't ever handle a trout with dry hands. Trout don't have scales. Instead, they have a mucous membrane on the outside of their bodies. I've seen trout that have had handprints on them. When that happens, they're inevitably going to get ick. Ick is something a bacteria causes, and it'll kill them. So you have to always wet your hands before you handle a trout.
Chris, do you
We're
want to?
just a second. I'm almost done. We're just recovering from whirling disease, which nearly wiped out the entire population. We prefer you not fish at all, but if you do, use these ethics and put us back in the water so that we can all enjoy each other from here on in. So saith the trout.
So say
Roll
it.
them, Beto.
Sounds good. Okay. Terry, what would you like to do now? Want me to play the video? Or would you
I
like
think
to?
we'll play the video. I fished about every stream in Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and some in New Mexico. I've also boned fished, permit fished in the Yucatan down in Mexico. I've surf fished off the East Coast. There's hardly any type of fish I have yet not caught. That's just my background. The main thing I put this video on, Mad Dog Rivers YouTube covers almost every imaginable thing that's out there about fly fishing, from rods, lines, reels, indicators, accessories. They have a video YouTube on everything you can imagine. So it just as important as you mark this on your favorites so that when you have any questions about any aspect of fly fishing, you'll find it on there. And this object of this video is of course a fly rod, but it's very important that you keep Mad River fishing, and they have, and you go to the right hand side, you'll find there's Orpus instructors there, all kinds, Cabela's there once in a while, the different rod manufacturers. So I wanted that to be a source of your search to go to these YouTube episodes, okay? Besides this,
what's the name
that's the most
what's the name of
important
the
thing.
video? What's the name of the video again, please? I'm sorry.
Mad River is the name of the fly fishing company.
Yeah, it's Mad River. This particular video, the name of it is called Getting Started in Fly Fishing, episode 13. There was 12 previous episodes, but this is kind of a summary of, you've watched one on lines, rods, reels, leaders, and this one kind of is a summary of all those.
Okay, thank you.
And we are going to play this video, but the audio is very quiet on it, and it may not come through too loud for you listeners. So Terry thought he might actually narrate over this video and give him a little time to give his expertise more. So Terry, would you still like to do that?
Well, first of all, play it for a little bit, and then let's ask everybody if they were able to hear it.
Okay.
And Steve, could you please send out the link for the video too, if you haven't already?
I did on the instruction sheet.
Oh,
Steve,
okay.
did you send everybody what we're going to cover on these 4 sessions?
Yep,
Yes.
I got it.
Okay.
I did.
So when you get that, these red or blue highlights, copy and paste it to the top of your internet, and it
Okay,
will
thank you.
pull that up. The copy paste thing.
Okay.
You don't try and click necessarily on the document itself. Just copy and paste it to the top where your internet bar is, and that website will come up, and then you can add it to your favorites.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, ready. So Terry, you want me to play it and see if the guys can hear it very well?
Right, let's see if everybody can hear it, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, let me pull it up on the screen here. Hopefully it will share all right. My computer's a little slow. Can you see the image on your screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not highly technical with this, but it should work all right.
Now there, click on that.
What, Terry?
You got to click on the video and run that little dot clear to the right so we
Yeah.
can hear what he's saying. There
Right.
you go. Move that clear over to the right. There you go.
6 basic things with the fly rod. And the fly rod is a flexible lever that makes the job of fly casting easier. It aids in the manipulation of the fly. We have to make it act like food, remember? And it also helps us to fight the fish.
It's pretty hard to hear him.
Hard to hear, Steve?
I can't hear him either.
I can't hear him.
Okay.
It's
Sorry
all
about this. That's as loud as this video goes. So that's why we thought Terry would just narrate over this.
Well, I hear it very good with my particular setup, but I will try and repeat what he's saying.
Okay, so the other guys can't hear it, Terry. Let's just
Okay.
play it without that. Okay.
And Steve, hit that square box on the far right.
To go full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, fellas. Okay, Terry, go ahead.
Okay. What he's talking about is what rod to pick. And the rod that I would pick is a 5-weight. The reason I would pick a 5-weight, it is the easiest line weight to learn how to use a fly rod. When you go bigger than 5, you have to be really a good rod fish, know how to handle a rod really well and load it up to cast a 6 and higher. 4 and 3, those small ones are for fishing real small streams like brook trout. But the 5-weight is the most all-around rod that you would use in Colorado. The only time I go higher than 5-weight is when I go to Wyoming and Montana and the wind is blowing 50 miles an hour. Then I have to go to a bigger weight line so I can
As
cast the
always.
fly out there against the wind. 9 foot is pretty common for most 5-weight rods. So did you mute this, Steve?
I muted the speaker, the video, that's
Okay.
all.
I think
So
Terry
you-
wants to hear it.
I like to hear it so I can
Oh,
repeat what he's saying, so I can hear him also.
okay, Terry, there you go.
Next thing we talked about was fly reels, number 2 on our.
Now the rod I prefer is a medium weight rod rather than a fast action because it's much easier to cast. Now, my last number of rods I got from my kids and myself have been a combination rod that comes with the reel, line, and leader in it. And the reason being is those combinations, the reel and the line, are all balanced to the rod that you buy. We pick the line. We start with what kind of line we want to use. The line, a 5-weight, is used for most of the flies that we will fish. Flies or nips that we will fish in Colorado or Wyoming or even Montana. And so we start with the line, and then we put the combination together. And the line that I like are made by Rio, R-I-O. You can cast a good fly line with a bad rod, but the best rod will not cast a cheap fly line. And these fly lines run about $60. Average price of a real line is 60 bucks. And if you buy a cheap line, the best rod won't do the job. An object of a good line is that when you load the rod, you want the line to roll out. You want it to roll out so that it will straighten out, and you roll it out before it hits the water. And then you want it all the way straight out before it gets about 2 feet above the water, and then you just let it set down. That's very important. And I use all weight forward lines myself. And all weight forward. And I also make them floating. I do not use any sinking lines. There's no really need to use a sinking line in fishing Colorado, Wyoming, or Montana. A sinking line is to get that line right down to the bottom. You might use a sinking line if you were fishing for bonefish or something where you wanted that line to get right down to the bottom so it didn't scare the fish. But we don't do that kind of fishing here in the West. The reason that the tapers are tapered, it makes it easy for that line, that leader, to roll out and straighten out. If it was a straight line, like a spinning line, it won't roll out and straighten out. And so what you wanted to do is, with the weight forward and the tapered leader, is it will roll out better on your cast.
Yeah, the reason for that is if you're used to using a spinning rod or just a regular casting rod, your lure has weight, and that's what propels it forward. But you're casting a fly which has no weight, and so the line has to carry the load of it going forward. That's why you have to have a line like you do in fly fishing.
Do you want to pause that, Steve, to let Terry catch up?
Okay. Now the tippet, they're talking about 2X, 3X, 4X tippet. Generally, the length of your leader is the length of your rod. So if you're fishing a 9-foot rod, you want 9 feet of leader. Now, one thing you can do is buy a 5X leader, 7.5 feet, then add to it the other 2 or 3 feet that you want, and maybe 5, 6, or 7, depending upon how small the fly is and how spooky the fish are. Okay? The smaller the fly usually is, the larger the number of the leader. So as the number goes up on the leader, it's a finer leader. A 5 weight is probably about 5X is probably about 5 pounds. And 6 or 7 is under 5 pounds. That's a 2 or 3 pound leader. And so I've landed fish with 6 and 7X, a 2 pound leader at the fly, and still caught 4 or 5 pound fish. So what's he talking about right now?
Keeping from untangling your leader. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do.
Untangle the leader?
He's
Well,
talking about
what you
stretching
want
it and getting the friction out of it by using either a piece of leather or fingers to get the friction out of it with the heat of your hands.
What's the difference between a leader and a tippet?
A leader and a tippet's the same thing.
Oh, thanks.
It's the same thing.
No, but when you first take it out of the package, you want to run it. What he's talking about is running it through. If you can see, I've got a little gizmo of leather that you run it through, and that creates friction in it and warms it up so it will straighten out. And also, you want to stretch it as far as you can without breaking it, so it doesn't stretch when it's in the water or when you're casting it.
This is one of these gadgets that you put your leader through in here, and you squeeze it, and you pull your leader through this between these two pieces here, and it will straighten out your leader.
Right.
What I used to do 40, 50 years ago when we had tires that had tubes in them, I'd keep a little piece of rubber about 2 inches wide and about 4 or 5 inches long, and we would fold that around the leader, and we would stretch the leader through a piece of inner tube rubber. That did the same thing. And you pull it slowly because you don't want to pull it too fast, because these gadgets generate heat, and the heat warms up the leader to the point where it'll straighten out. If you do it too fast, you get it too hot, and that will weaken the tippet.
Right.
So what's he talking about now? Unmute it, Steve, so I can hear what he's trying to tell us.
Can you hear it now, Terry?
No? I can hear a little bit.
Loud as this one goes.
I'm not sure what he's trying to tell us right now,
Okay.
but we could probably end this thing a little bit here.
End the video?
I think so. I don't think
Okay.
the best thing is to watch it later yourself.
Okay. Why don't you just talk some about what you want, Terry?
Right here, I have in my hand a 9-foot 5-weight fly rod. That's a telescoping rod, and everything goes inside each other. You just keep stretching it out till you get it to 9 feet. It's a kind of handy thing that I can put on my bicycle or when I walk, and it all goes together. But this thing will stretch out to about 9 feet. Anyway, it goes on and on, but I'm not going to stretch it all. I don't get the feeling wreck it. But so it's like I broke my leader off. But anyway, this is a 9-foot telescoping rod. This is it's got yellow line on it. They come in various colors. The backing is orange, and that's kind of what it is. So what do we want to go to next? We got a new person on here. Is that it?
Yeah, we've got a few new people, Steve and Eugene.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry and Chris, this is up to you, what you want to do next. I'm just helping you moderate.
Okay, do we want to talk about accessories?
Yeah, let's do that. Talk about your gear.
Okay. The first thing I think we all need is a good pair of polarized sunglasses so that you can see where the fish are, where the bottom of the stream or whatever it is. And before I start fishing, I analyze the water. The darker spots are the deeper runs and the shallow parts. And so it's very, very important that you can see the fish. I always analyze where I think the fish are. And so when I go to fish these fish, I divide the river up into sections. And we'll talk about that down the road at another time. But right now, I want to talk about accessories. And around my neck, I got a whole bunch of accessories. This one here retrieves the hook out of a fish, so you want to immediately get it out. Now, I fish only quality waters, mostly tailwater fishing, which is below a dam. And my hook is always barbless. There's two reasons for that. The first reason is it saves the fish from not being damaged. But to me, one of the other most important things is that when it's a windy day, quite often we hook ourselves. And it's much easier to get a barbless hook out of your shirt, your gear, your hat, and out of your finger. Because if it's not barbless, you got to run the hook all the way through the finger, pinch the barb up before you can take it out. Because otherwise it will really tear you up. And that's kind of hard sometimes to run the hook all the way through, pinch that barb. So that's probably one of the most important things. And especially if you're fishing with somebody else, you want their hook barbless, so if they hook you, you can easily get it out. And I've had experience when I teach people that are standing, I stand next to them, and sometimes their cast gets away from themselves. So the other thing I have is a snipper where you snip the line after you tied it on. Now this one I like, it's not too cheap. It runs about $25, but what I like about this particular one is it got a threader. Can you see that threader on there? So what you do is you put the fly in there and you run this right through the eye of the fish, this little deal. So you put the hook down here and then you run your line through this thing. It's the same thing type of deal. You use the threader sewing machine, one of these. And you run your line through it and then you just pull the hook off and you just got it through the eye. That's one way to do it.
A couple of comments about getting hooked. This is a bigger issue if you're fishing in a boat, probably, than it is if you're just standing there next to each other. I always get the biggest hat brim you can find. If you can find a 4-inch or a 5-inch brim, get it. Because if somebody casts, there's less chance of the hook going into you. It'll hit the brim and bounce off. The other thing that I always do is get the biggest bandana I can find and put it around my neck. So hopefully it'll land in it instead of in my face. The other thing that I carry, which a lot of people probably don't, is I have a syringe of xylocaine that I injected wherever the hook goes in so I can get it out without the people feeling a lot of pain. And it does work better. So that's what I got to say about that.
You always want a good hat, just like that.
Well, I've got this one, and it's got a wire brim around it, but I used to have one that had a 5-inch brim on it that I preferred. I just don't know where it is anymore. But wear that neckerchief for sure and get it up close around your ears. You don't want your earlobes hanging out. That's a great place for a fly line to run into. And if the hook's going 90 miles an hour, it hurts.
There are a number of gadgets that we're putting a fly to thread your line into the thing. This is a hook, and this little gadget, it's got a magnet in it, and you stick this fly like this, and can you see where the fly is sitting in there? Well, there's
Yeah.
a little slot. See that slot? You run your line right down this slot, and it'll go right through the eye of the hook every time. And that magnet will hold that fly in the perfect position, and it will line up the eye. That's another neat gadget. It's almost a must to have that. The other thing that I have on my deal is I have these gadgets that you can Oops, I dropped my fly. I'll have to look for that one later. There's another fly. This little gadget will hold the fly. And when I have the line through that, the leader through that, I twist it like this to tie the fly onto the leader. That's very handy, one of these little gadgets. And I have 2 or 3 of them. I carry a number of them on me. There's all kinds. Because I will fish 2 flies, and sometimes I use one to hold the leader, and where I will hook another fly on it, and I don't want to lose my fly. So I have 2 or 3 of these on me. Now, the other nice gadget is a hemostat. Ever use a hemostat
Yep.
to hold the fly? This is a very fine pointed one. Now, on the hemostat, yes. Now what I like, on my necklace thing, I have this little deal. I have a piece of elastic. So when I pinch it, it holds it on there like this. And I like making my stretch things. Now here's a neat thing about this piece of stretch thing. How many of you go to casinos and they give you a thing that you fasten to your shirt, and on the other end is your gambling card? Ever been to a casino where they give you a deal that on the other end is your gambling card that you stick it in the slot machine or whatever you're doing? Well, this is a piece of that stuff.
It's cut.
This is a piece of that.
Or you
And,
can use a thing called a zinger, which has got a reel on it. Very similar.
right. This is like a zinger. This is one of them. So anyway, I have a tendency to make my own. And I made one out of this one for my nipper. Now, here's one that's got a zinger. And what I did on this thing, this is my little tweezers for taking the flies out of my box. And the zinger is on a piece of elastic that's hooked to this attachment so that I can reach down and take it out of my box. Then I have a little piece of tubing right there that I can stick the end of that in there. That's one of my gadgets. And then of course, this is my fly float. now I'm gonna go to my vest. And on my vest, this is a shoulder one that half the pack's on the back and half's on the front. And it's got a lot of gadgets. Now, I always wear a vest. And the reason is I use a wading stick when I fish or walking along the shoreline. And when I'm fooling with my rod, a good vest will have a fly rod holder that you stick your fly rod in. And then I attach it up here to my top of my vest so that I freeze both hands. And that's important. So when I'm out there wading, I'm now at the age where I use 2 wading sticks because my balance is not that good. So a vest or any of these gadgets will have a deal that holds your rod so you freeze up both hands. So that's important to have on a vest or one of your gadgets. And I'm going to take that off. Put that down over here. So now I have my vest. And in these vests, I have a gadget that has a pair of pliers to pinch that barb. You want a nice fine pair of pliers that pinch the barb on all your flies. And what I do is I pinch all the flies after I buy them before I put them in my fly box. That's very important. And I have a number of other gadgets that we'll get to later when we talk about fastening line to your tippet. And also, all my fly boxes are attached to something, a zinger or something like that, so I don't lose the fly box in the water. Now, a lot of fly boxes don't have a deal, so I either drill a hole. This one here, I drilled a little hole to the angle to hold this thing because it didn't come with anything. Now, what this piece is leader wire with a sleeve, leader wire sleeve that I crimped to hold that leader wire together. So I made this little thing. Now, when I have my flies in my boxes, right open, I have them on a zinger already. This thing will attach to the zinger like this so that I don't drop it in the water, because today, flies you're paying over $2 a piece. You buy them at the fly shop, you're looking at $2.40, 50 cents per fly, regardless what size it is. And that adds up to a lot of money. So this is one of my typical fly boxes. But I don't want to lose it. So I always have it attached to me. And I usually have it on a zinger. There's all kinds of zingers that you can have. That's very important. So, and I've gone to thinner boxes because I don't like this thing bulging way out on me. And this one here has got a whole bunch of little dinky flies in there. When you fish the San Juan, you're fishing down to 22, 24-inch flies. And we'll talk about the flies in this thing, I think, on the 3rd episode when we talk about the various flies that we need depending upon where we're going. I have another little gadget that opens up like this. Got a magnet in there. And after I'm done with my flies, I put them in here before I put them back in my box. And I make sure that everything is good on the fly before I put it back in there. And this is the last time I went fishing to the San Juan. I have yet to put them back in the boxes. I haven't checked them all out yet. And there's a couple different types of things like that. In my vest, I have fly floating. And let's see what else I got on the back. Okay, on the back of this thing, my shoulder is where I carry my net. And it's got a little magnet. And the landing net that I use is an important accessory. Where is it? It's right here. This was my landing net. Now the best kind of landing net is this plastic one that is white, clear, like a white plastic, and it doesn't scare the fish. If you use one of these cloth net ones that are black, the fish will run each time from you. So this thing here is fastened on the back of my vest, and it's got a attachment here that I fasten to my wading belt, so that when I drop it in the water, it's still fastened to my wading belt or to my fishing vest. So that's important that that's fastened there together. Now I particularly like this particular net because it stretches out. So now I got a real long net where I can reach out there and I don't have to work this fish so close to me. And when I'm done, I push it back together and hang it on the back of me, back of my fishing vest. This is, you can get this at Pro Bass. That's a good accessory. And so that's what I got in a number. And in my vest, I got all kinds of fly boxes.
Well, two things we didn't mention that you probably need if you're dry fly fishing. You got to have gink or float that you put on the fly. It's a silicone stuff that
Right.
keeps it where it'll float. And also you got to have, for tying your knots, you need nippers. And the good ones
That's what I showed you.
have a little needle right here so you can put it through the eye, because sometimes when people tie flies, it gets glue on it. So you have to have that to clean that out. So those two are necessary.
So when I was showing you my that original fly nipper that I had,
Okay.
it's on one of these stretchy things I made. I showed you this thing that opened up for the right there. You can see a needle.
Yeah.
It's right there that cleans the eye out.
Right.
So you can get the leader. Because sometimes they put head cement. It's sitting right there, that little needle. And you just make sure that that eye is clean to hold it, because a lot of times they don't come too clean. That's what I like about this particular nipper. It's got a threader. The threader will also come off. And I'll show you how I use those things later. But anyway, that's kind of important. So you want a nipper that does open up the eye, make sure the eye is clear. Okay, got anything else I should add, Chris?
Well, I don't like wearing vests for a variety of reasons. So I just wear this little necklace like Terry has, and I have the essentials, which is a bottle of floating, a nipper, a little tiny hemostat that fits here, and this is a little tiny fly box.
Could you move the camera down so we could see it, Chris? Or okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is a little tiny fly box because I don't carry them all at one time, you know. And it just makes it a lot easier to carry this around my neck. And I carry usually a fanny pack with anything else like extra reel and that sort of thing, because I get too hot in a fly vest, so I don't use one. But that's just personal preference. And something that Terry does some that I've been doing for the last, I don't wade fish anymore. Y'all that know me know I'm in a wheelchair, which makes that pretty much impossible. So My fishing is done out of a contraption that looks like this, a Mackenzie boat. And that's the only thing I use. And I always hire a guide because I can't get around and do it without that. So my stuff is specialized for use in a Mackenzie boat. I carry little hipper waders, which don't go any higher. They don't go all the way up. They just go up to your crotch. I've got wading shoes, which are a little bit different. These are made of neoprene, but they do have the felt on the bottom of them. Okay. If you're going to be walking through rivers with rocks and so forth, you don't want these. These are just for, if you're in a boat and you stop for a second to get out, these are good. Like I showed you, I always carry a first aid kit with things specific to fly fishing, like the xylocaine, so I can get hooks out of somebody and they'll sit still long enough. I always carry a poncho, just a little bitty lightweight one, because you never know what the weather is going to be like when you get out on the river. And since I fish from a boat, I carry a dry bag that I keep a lot of this stuff in so it doesn't get wet in the boat. But I had a devil of a time ever finding a dry bag that size. But all this will pack down into a little tiny pack and a fanny pack. So it's ideal for my purposes. It wouldn't be as good as if you're going to wade fish. You'd need different stuff like what Terry's showing you. It's just a different approach. I guess he went off to grab something. Okay.
No, I got one of these things that I put my cell phone in, and
Oh, that's a cool idea.
hold the cell phone in. This is just for cell phone, and what's nice about that, when you put your cell phone in, it seals it waterproof. You can still touch your phone
Huh.
on the screen touch. This is
I
thin
just use
enough
a sandwich bag.
Where did you get one of those? They have them
Well,
at Cabela's or
one of the
online?
places that I do go to is Sportsman Warehouse. Have you ever heard of Sportsman Warehouse?
Yeah,
There's one down there off of Oxford. I think it's Oxford. That is just west of Santa Fe and north, but where there's a Costco in there. It's next door to the Costco, Sportsman Warehouse. Next door to the Costco. That's on the west side of Santa Fe between the river there. There's a Sportsman Warehouse, and you can get a lot of stuff there. And they have the best price of flies too, if you have to buy any.
John
Otherwise,
Bell,
I buy flies online.
John Bell, is that the place you were telling me about today, Sportsman's Warehouse in Parker?
Yeah, at the Costco in Parker, they took over the big building there in front of Costco in Parker.
Well, they have one up on north on I-25, but they also have one right down here west of Santa Fe and just north of Oxford, I think it is, where you go across there, where the Costco store is, right next to them.
Mhm.
That's a very good place to buy stuff. They have a lot of gadgets, all kinds of stuff there.
You fellas like Cabela's?
Cabela's is pretty expensive. You can get stuff at Sportsman Warehouse for 15-20% cheaper than the same stuff that Cabela's sells.
And then you go to Orvis and it's going to be 15% on top of that.
Right. A lot of times I go to these places and see something that I would like to have. Then I go to Amazon and have them send it to me. A lot of times I get it cheaper.
Yeah.
When I first started doing this seriously back in the 80s, I think I bought everything Orvis had. I could have had my own store before I eventually went down to what I've got now. It all really looked neat on the shelf, but I never did use most of it. So starting out, be careful about what you buy, because you can sure spend a lot of money in a hurry for something that provides very little benefit.
I think my wading boots right now, not the waders, the wading boots are Orpus wading boots that I've had for 30, 35 years. I resold the felt on them, and I have tungsten screws in the bottom of them so I don't slip on the moss or the rocks when I go.
Yeah, that's a good
Wait.
idea. But you
I
have to
didn't
have
bring
felt
up-
bottom
I'll
shoes.
I'll
if you're
show
gonna
those
walk
next
in the
time.
fall.
One of the next time, my wading boots. And the waders I use are always breathable, so you don't sweat. And you can get those online. You get them anywhere. There are some really nice ones that carry a lifetime warranty.
Are they Gore-Tex, Terry?
They're Gore-Tex.
Yeah.
All breathable stuff is pretty much a Gore-Tex material.
Right. Well, they're selling knockoffs. Gore-Tex patent ran out about 5 years ago, so other people are selling it now.
Right.
But it's all the same method of letting vapor out and not letting water in. It's the way
Right.
the pores are set in the fabric.
Terry and Chris, would you like to invite any questions from the guys here?
I would.
Sure.
Go ahead, guys.
Do you have a list, like a list of, in order, here are the things that you need to get started, either Terry or Chris? You know, because here's the must-haves, here are the things you might think about. Or could you recommend a resource that would do that?
Well, remember I told you to go to Mad Rivers
Okay.
Outfitters? They have about 50 episodes on there, and you'll find one of the episodes that's got everything listed there and explains, some of them explains you how to use them.
Okay.
So I would start there. I think it's really a good thing to have on your favorites on your computer is to go to that, because everything you're talking about is there.
Okay. I frankly was
My
trying to-
list, if I did a list, it'd be a mile long. I've got more accessories than you're thinking.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Here's one thing I didn't show you all that I eventually got, because what was happening to me, I was fishing out of a Mackenzie boat. You got to pull up to the land sometime. There are no mosquitoes on the water, but as soon as you get close to the shore, they will completely cover your body. So I invested in this thing, which is a bug shirt, which I put on right before I get out of the boat. Keeps the mosquitoes off of me. I'd recommend one if you're going to do any boat fishing.
Especially in Wyoming or
Yep.
Montana.
Yep.
Or Alaska. Those mosquitoes are big enough to carry you off.
That's true.
I've had mosquitoes attack me in Yellowstone Park, Wyoming. I had so many on them I couldn't see my hand. They were
Right.
completely covered with mosquitoes. And I used to have a mosquito net that went over my big wide brim fishing hat because you couldn't take a breath without swallowing half a dozen.
Right.
So there's some places that are pretty bad.
The worst, Alaska is the worst, like Terry said. And the second worst, if you're in the Wind Rivers, you know, up just sort of south of Jackson Hole, the Wind River Range, the mosquitoes there at the wrong time of year are almost as bad as Alaska. I mean, you can see a person, but you can't tell for sure what they are because they're so covered in mosquitoes. It's unbelievable.
I backpack into the Wind Rivers to the headwaters off the Continental Divide. And I can guarantee for every fly that you put on your line, you'll have a fish on it.
Yep.
I've been in the waters where they fought each other to get to your fly. And sometimes I've hooked a fish and another fish would try and take it out of the corner of its mouth. And I've caught brook trout that weighed 3 or 4 pounds.
Really, that's a
where
big
the
bird.
dots on the blue of the brookies were 1/4 inch or 3/8 in diameter, each color. That's how big they were.
Wow, that is a big brookie.
It is a big brookie.
There
they
are
got
places like
from
that
eating
to
those
fish, but they're
mosquitoes.
not right off the highway. You gotta work for it. I've had similar like horse packing back up into Yellowstone. It's similar to that when you get way up in there. You go 2 days to get up there on horseback. Similar kind of thing.
Mosquito pattern's a good pattern, fly pattern to have in your box when you get up there.
Right.
Hey, let me ask a beginner's question. I like to get out and walk in the water. How do you do that safely? How do you walk over rocks in the water and not fall in and get swept away? What's your technique?
Well, the first thing is you got to make sure that you have polarized lenses so you can see where the rocks are underwater. If you don't, you may break a leg. If you step
Okay.
on a rock and it tumbles, that's the first thing. And the second thing is you're going to be very careful how you walk. Terry uses what look like ski poles to help brace him in the water.
These are collapsible, and I carry them on my belt. And I'm now at the point where I use 2 of these things. And this sits on my belt, and I use it when I'm waiting, and it's attached to me. So if I drop it, I can just pick it back up. So when I'm standing out in the water fishing, quite often it's hooked to my belt. And I let it lay in the water as I fish. And I have it there whenever I move. The other thing, when I walk in a stream, I shuffle my feet. I walk and I put my toe down first and I slide it forward. I don't walk heel first. I walk toe first. So if I feel the boulder, and I can actually put my feet between 2 boulders, and I'm careful that I don't step over the boulder. I kind of work around them, and my stick comes in handy, and it's a must with. The other thing is when you get out in the current, you always want to be sideways to the current.
Right.
Never face the current, because the current will hit your waders or whatever, and your waders will be this wide. When you stand sideways, they're only that wide.
Right.
And so you go through it sideways as you walk, and toe in, put your toe in, and you feel, and you just kind of work that toe down in between those loose rocks. If you put down heel foot, you want your foot firmly planted and going in toe foot. It helps when the bottom is real mossy. And I have tungsten screws in the bottom. I'll show them one of the next time my wading shoes. And I probably have a dozen screws in each boot. They're about 3 inches long, 3/8 of an inch long. They do not go through the felt. They help you from slipping on the moss.
The other thing is you want to be sure if you're out there that you have felt bottom shoes. If you don't, there's no way you can ever have any traction whatsoever. The other thing that I would caution people who are using chest waders, be sure the belt is on tight around your waist. If you fall over and the water gets in there, it's like the reverse of a parachute, and it'll just keep you dragging you downstream. You can't get loose.
I have a Cabela's belt that I've had for 30 years. I don't know if they sell them anymore. Goes around me. Really tight.
Right. You don't want
Really
any
tight.
water to get in that if you tip over.
So that my waders don't fill up. So I can
Right.
quickly get out of the water. Another thing what people used to do, the poncho that Chris was talking about to keep you dry. You can take that poncho, if you're really nervous about falling in, and put that on while you're crossing the stream. You put that over the top of your waders, put the wader belt really tight, or a belt like this really tight. And now, not only will the water not get into the waders, but your poncho, I don't mean a poncho, I mean a jacket, will keep you dry up to here and you put that over your vest and you get that nice and snug and tight. You're not sure yourself. Then when you get to the other side or whatever, take the punch off and pull it back on.
Yeah,
So
you're
the
getting
boat
you're getting a double seal that way, so it's a waste.
Right. Right. Sometimes when you're not sure, and sometimes when it's rain, the water gets kind of muddy because it rings on the, and you
Right.
can't always see. So you want to make sure you're not familiar with that river. The water could be pretty deep. But anyway, that's what I do. In my, I carry now 2 wading sticks, one on each side of me. My rod is in my holder that's either on my vest or some rig that I have. I have 3 or 4 types of vests. So I walk across that way.
Have you ever had a close call, been pulled under?
Yeah.
I have when I was a kid. I didn't understand how important the belt was, and I fell over, and my waders filled up with water, and it was just dragging me over the rocks. Really hard to get loose. You know, the water weighs a lot, and if it's going 4 or 5 miles an hour, that's a lot of pressure to get loose from.
Right.
So I learned after that if I was going to use chest waders to snug that belt down until I turned blue.
And water current is so strong that if
Oh, yeah.
your foot gets caught, they'll push you right down to the bottom of the river or the stream, even if it's only a couple of feet deep. That water, you want, when you walk across, like I said, I always put my toe down in there, and I make sure that it's not wedged between any rocks, because if I was all over,
that can be a real problem.
Will actually push you right down. In fact, there was a father and a son not more than a month ago that had life jackets on. They were kayaking on the Colorado River, I think somewhere near Glenwood Springs. And they got caught on the bottom of the river and they drowned with their life jackets on. Just because you got a life jacket on, you have to be free to be able to move down. You don't want to get hung up on anything.
Well, there's also a thing called the hydraulic in a river where it starts just tumbling. And I've run into those kayaking in the past, and they will run you straight to the bottom, and they're the devil to get out of. Usually it's up against a big rock or something stationary, but the water hits it and just tumbles, and it'll take you to the bottom, and they're really hard to get out of. A lot of people drown that way.
Fellas, we've got 10 minutes left in the class. We're supposed to end at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
You want to just continue with discussion, or do you want to show the second video?
Let's look at the second video, but it talks about accessories, the minimum accessories you want. And like I said, put that in your favorites and go over it a couple times.
Okay.
And thank you both as you're queuing up the video. I appreciate
Yes, thank you.
everything. So. Thanks again.
Okay, you're welcome.
This is a challenge trying to do on Zoom as opposed to in person.
Okay, are you seeing the video?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've got the sound up as loud as it'll go. Can you hear it?
No.
No.
Can you hear it now?
Sort of.
have to spend a bunch of money on these right here sell for about $4.95. Yeah, there's $50 or $100 nippers. You may have seen me review them on our YouTube channel, but you don't need that, because really the only thing is you're going to be cutting is you're going to have to trim that tag in when you tie the fly onto your tippet. You have to trim it, and then every once in a while when you have to replace tippet to make your leader whole again, you're going to trim the tag ends off of your surgeon's knot. Okay, so a basic pair of nippers to get you started will do you just fine. One thing you do want to make sure is there's a little pin on most of these nippers, and sometimes when you buy flies or tie flies, the eye of the hook gets a little glued over, and so you can use that pin to poke through the eye, thus allowing you to get the tippet through. Okay, so
Hi, friends. Brian Fleshing of Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fish.
the next thing is a pair of hemostats, also called forceps. And these, you've maybe seen doctors or dentists use these. They are kind of surgical tools. But we as fly fishers use these for a variety of different things. First and foremost, you're going to be able to hold things. Maybe you're holding the fly while you're tying the knot. Maybe you're grabbing onto the end of a tag end, again, when you're tying the knot. We can also use hemostats to crimp the barb on a hook to make it barbless. You may already know that most flies have a barb on them. Here's the point. This is the barb. We always want to smash that barb so that it's flat. And there's a bunch of folks out there that will tell you that this is nicer you're being nicer to the fish by doing this. It doesn't create as much of a hole, or it doesn't gouge the mouth so much. Yeah, I'm not buying into that too much. If you want to be that nice to the fish, you should probably stay home. But I crimp the barb because as a fishing guide for 30 years, I've had countless hooks stuck in my ear, in my face, in my arm, in my fingers. Being barbless allows me to reach down there with the hemostats and back it right out. If you didn't crimp that barb, you might wind up being a trip to the emergency room. So I highly recommend for now and forever that you crimp those barbs and make that hook barbless. Yeah, and then also you can use this to reach into a fish's mouth and grab the hook, positive grab, so you can back it out of the mouth. And we can also use hemostats to split shot onto your leader or tippet. And then if you're going to fish dry flies, if you remember back from a previous episode, dry flies float. And they're either imitating adult aquatic insects, terrestrial insects like ants, grasshoppers, and beetles. And yes, they are designed and tied to float, but they're going to need a little help along the way. So you want some fly floating. And for years and years and years, a compound called gink. It's basically a silicone paste in a little bottle. You can always tell it by the red top. And by the way, gink is right here on the bottle. It says world's best fly dressing. So how could you go wrong? But gink is like, it's a noun that's become a verb. You often hear guides or fly anglers refer to it as ginking your fly. And what you're doing is you're putting just a little dab of the silicone paste either on your fingers. On the fly itself, you're rubbing it in, and it helps to keep that waterproof and helps keep it floating for a longer period of time. Now, gink is just kind of what we've sold around here for years. There's a bunch of different ones on the market that do a fine job as well. But the silicone paste is typically going to be your first line of defense. But there is a new brand on the market these days, and man, I wish I would have come up with this. But it's called Fly-Agra. Seriously, it's called Fly-Agra. Yeah, it's a quirky name, gets a lot of laughs in classes and stuff. But I'm telling you, this stuff works. We got a couple of guys that joke around that Fly-Agra will float split shot if you need it to. And Fly-Agra is a liquid floatant, and you can take your hemostats, dip the fly down in there, shake it off, and it'll float like a cork. You can also pre-dress a dry fly. If you buy the fly, you can dip it in here, let it dry overnight, and it really kind of puts a permanent waterproofing on the fly. And man, this stuff really works. It does come with a warning though. I have to alert you. It does come with a warning right there on the bottom. It says, if your fly stays up for more than 4 hours, please consult your local fly. Flyagra, we sell it like crazy. Next on the list, you want to have some, if you're going to fish nymphs, wet flies, or streamers, virtually anything below the surface, if you're going to want some
A bunch
splits,
of different ones on the market.
good old
that do
lead,
as well.
tin,
Silicone paste is going to be your first line
some of the best is the Dinsmore
There's two
tin,
brand on the market these days, and man, I wish I could
where lead is outlawed, like
they're called Viagra.
you can't have
Seriously, it's called Viagra.
lead on your fly.
Yeah, it's a quirky name.
Although it does,
Funny, this stuff works. You got a couple of guides that joke
Lead
around.
fillers.
Will float.
What, Terry?
Can you hear,
And
hear this
Viagra
guy
is a
talking
liquid
off my,
form,
off of my
and you take the
TV?
sense, dip the fly down in there.
Yes.
We can hear him. You're making an echo with your
Also
TV.
pre-dress a dry fly. If you buy the fly, you can dip it in here, let it dry overnight.
Terry, are you not giving the sound anymore?
Well, I thought maybe you couldn't hear that.
Consult your local fly shop. Flyagra, we sell it like crazy. Next on the list, you want to have some, if you're going to fish nymphs, wet flies, or streamers, virtually anything below the surface, you're going to want some split shot. Good old fashioned lead or tin weights. Okay. Some of the best is the Dinsmore's tin shot. Tin can be important in places where lead is outlawed, like Yellowstone National Park, for example. You can't have lead weight or lead on your flies at all. So tin shot, although it doesn't sink as fast as lead does, and here at the shop we carry this Super Dew. It's out of France. It is by far the best all-around lead shot that we have found. So if you're fishing nymphs or streamers or wet flies, you're probably going to want to add some split shot to your tippet, and you're going to use your hemostats to crimp it right on. Really pretty easy. Okay. You need to have, also, if you're going to fish nymphs and wet flies, you're going to want to have strike indicators. And friends, I'm going to just tell you how it is. A strike indicator is a fly fisherman's fancy word for a bobber. You know, somewhere along the lines at a dinner party somewhere, the word bobber just didn't sound as sophisticated, so they came up with a strike indicator. And let's not beat around the bush. It's a fly fisherman's bobber. And when you're fishing nymphs, especially as a beginner, I would highly recommend that you use a strike indicator or a bobber. And there's all kinds of different variations. You've got little cork or foam that slide right onto the leader. You've actually got some yarn that work pretty well. You've got some Play-Doh, like it's almost like Play-Doh or putty that you can just mold onto your leader. And then the most popular these days, they are literally bobbers. The air locks. These things are wildly popular. We sell 10 to 1 over anything else. Of course, you can find them on our website. I think I even did a review on these things, but we sell 10 to 1 the air locks over anything else. And they are a fly fisherman's bobber. But don't be ashamed. There's nothing wrong with fishing with a bobber. It's going to help you, especially as a beginner. And last but not least, on my list is my polarized sunglasses. Probably my most important accessory. First and foremost, you've got to fly whizzing past your head at approximately 90 miles an hour. You want some eye protection. Number 2, polarization on that pair of glasses allows you, it cuts the glare on the surface of the water. It allows you to see into the water, first and foremost, looking for fish. Maybe you're looking for structure where fish might be. And when you're wading in a stream, it can be helpful so that you can see the lay of the land below the water. So polarized sunglasses are an absolute must-have accessory that you just can't go fishing without. And don't worry, you don't have to break the bank. Don't believe the hype that you have to have a $200 or $300 pair of sunglasses. You can get a good pair of polarized sunglasses like you see here for 40, 50 bucks. No big deal. So that's kind of the short list of things that I really think you must have. You know, you might wind up with a pair of fishing waders and boots, you know, but that's not an absolute necessity. You can always wade without those if the weather is right. You also may want to have a fly fishing vest or something, or these days a sling pack is very popular to carry this stuff in, as well as your flies and your fly boxes. But that's not an absolute requirement. I'm sure you'll have pockets in your pants that you can put some of this stuff. So pair of nippers, pair of hemostats. If you're fishing dry flies, you want some fly floating. If you're fishing wet flies, nymphs, or streamers, you want some split shot. Again, for nymphs, strike indicators are highly recommended for you as a beginner, and everybody needs a pair of polarized sunglasses. So as always, if you have any questions, chime in below in the comments, give me a call, send me an email. Here at Mad River Outfitters, we're always happy to help and answer your questions. As always, subscribe to the YouTube channel because we've got a lot more coming at you. And thanks for watching.
I think that's it. I just got one thing to say before we leave, and that is all the people that sell fly rods do free casting clinics. I would highly recommend before you go fishing that you go to a casting clinic. They're free because they're trying to sell their rods, and just about any fly shop has them. What they'll do is take you out and put a piece of yarn on the end of your tippet and teach you how to cast. There's nothing more frustrating than getting out there and wrapping the line around your head and putting the hook in your ear. So I'd go to a clinic before I ever hit the water.
Okay. Fellas, I'm sorry about the audio quality. I'll try and work on that for next week, figure out why that wasn't quite good here, and we'll fix that.
Okay, we appreciate it.
Yeah, it was all good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. It was good.
Doing it on the fly, Steve.
As we all are, Steve.
Yeah. Terry, any final thoughts?
Not today, but anybody's welcome to email me. Email me any of your questions for the next time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right,
Okay.
have a good time.
Have a good night.
Good.
Thanks for your advice.
See you next time.
Bye.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.